Hello! Hi, everybody. Welcome to Dudes Brunch. I am your host, Taylor, and for brunch this morning, I had oatmeal and a breakfast sandwich because I had two brunches today. Hailing from Cincinnati, Ohio, fresh off a shift as a fast food wage slave, Tyler Reed, what did you have for brunch today?
Chipotle. Chipotle today, Chipotle yesterday, Chipotle the next day. Every day, Chipotle. Today I decided to try pork this time. It worked out. I also had coffee before and after my shift.
I can't- Laughing so hard he's crying, or crying so hard he's laughing in the port city of Cleveland, Ohio. Sean Evans,
Ugh,
what did you have for brunch
coffee
today?
cake and black coffee.
What's wrong with you?
That look, everybody, when you rewatch this, go look at Tyler's face when Taylor comes in. It just started like the funniest thing for me. I'm already busting out laughing, and this is the second time this has happened to me that I'm crying before we even get to like minute 2 of the whole series. So,
Oh my gosh.
yeah.
Okay, so if you're new to Dudes Brunch and you made it through that first minute, thank you so much. This is Dudes Brunch, a show where three dudes talk about things from popular culture and what they had for brunch. We already did the brunch part because I'm bad at intros, so now we're going to talk about the pop culture things. First up this week, Sean wants to talk to us about modern philosophy.
Hey everybody. Okay, so this week my topic was, it's kind of, I mean, I know that we're talking like current culture, pop culture, but in 2008 there was a movie released. It was kind of like the all-stars of contemporary philosophy at the time. It was called The Examined Life. And basically what it is, it's kind of just, I think there's like 7 or 8 philosophers on there, and they have like 10 minutes each to kind of talk about like what they're studying, their ideas that they think are kind of cool. Um, and I was rewatching it, as I do probably every 6 months, just because I think I find new things in it all the time. And I was wondering, I sent it out, and I started wondering if contemporary philosophy is punk. Because I think that, like, I mean, for me, I have an interest in philosophy, but I haven't really explored this question, or I haven't really seen like a philosophy of punk. And I'm wondering if there is one, if it would be like anti-punk to have a philosophy, if it would be like, if there, so that's why I just had all these questions that started thinking about, because some of the ideas that these philosophers are posing are like really radical, like, I guess to start the question, I'll answer my question and give it to you guys. I asked, like, do you think, which one of these philosophers do you think is the punkest? And I really like, I Slohav Zizek is on the movie. He's the guy, for you guys, who has the gray beard. He kind of like stutters a little bit. I've read a bunch of his books, and I really like what he had to say when he talks about how um, current environmentalism is backwards looking and conservative, and how if you were a real environmentalist, in terms of like really lived by environmentalism, you would even embrace trash. Like, you wouldn't say like there was a better time. You would say like, we have what we have, and we have to do our best with it. And I think that's a really punk thing to say. Like, that's really do-it-yourself kind of idea, that like you would use everything. That there's nothing that's kind of unlimited there, and that that the backwardsness and non-progression is kind of everywhere, even within these two, opposed value systems. So, just whoever wants to go first, I'm curious what you think.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and answer Sarah's question because I wanted to basically answer your question anyway. She wanted to re-explain what would make a philosopher punk. Um, I think all philosophy is fairly, I guess, punk. I guess. So I wouldn't say that just contemporary philosophy is punk. And I would say that it's punk because it sort of takes our idea of what life is and then just kind of like tries to just like sort of like deconstruct it. Like I'm gonna butcher her name. Avatar.
Oh yeah.
Uh, it's almost about like if you don't like because I guess a lot in philosophy you're trying to like sort of almost like break apart like religion and like why we think a certain way, and so the reason why it's punk is because it sort of tries to like destroy like our sort of natural
Preconceived
way of
notions.
preconceived notions, because we're born and we're born into like an like a family of people, and they're gonna instill like their beliefs, and we're gonna kind of gather an idea of how the world works from that, and so like philosophy is trying to like kind of like rip that apart and try to like give life at like its barest essentials, and it's really just like, well, we're some things that happen to be smarter than most things, and why does that matter? Does it matter? You know? So
So then, to answer Sean's question, I definitely thought the environmentalism piece was punk in a way. The one that really struck me as being punk, and we'll get to your broader question, I'm sure, but it was Cornel West, actually, because he talks about music and he talks about kind of the emotional energy behind music. And he says, I forget what he's talking about, but he uses the blues as a metaphor because the blues is like raw human emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for a lot of punk, a lot of the early punk especially, that's what it's all about. And it's not so much about like activism or purpose, which for some punk movements it is, but I think if you're just looking at the core of punk as opposed to other rock and roll, Cornel West is probably the closest equivalent. For me, anyway.
Okay. Well, good. I'm glad that everybody had somebody that like there wasn't like an agreement that somebody was more than the other, because I think that kind of goes to answering the first question of whether or not philosophy is punk, because I don't think anybody really said no. I mean,
you wouldn't be asking the question if there was like, I don't know, it almost was rhetorical to me, because I feel like if you had the thought, I think that implies that it probably is. Like it's
well,
just like if you're doing something and you're not sure if it's wrong, it's probably wrong.
you remember when I forget her name, when Dr. Anal or whatever was talking, and she was saying that like I know this is going to be a lot, like a huge step, that she says like Heidegger separated thinking from philosophy because not all thinking is philosophy.
It's okay, buddy.
And I was kind of thinking like maybe philosophy is not really punk, because it is like a pretty academic thing to do. Like
It is,
so
yeah.
looking like examining one's life, like the movie said, is one thing, but sitting down and like coming up with you know a Kantian moral imperative or something like that is not very punk. Like, or Christian philosophy, I would argue, is not super punk. Um, so, I mean, I guess that's why I asked the question, because I wanted to kind of hear what other people thought. If it was like
I
as
think the
contemporary.
messages of philosophy are punk, particularly applied, but the action of doing philosophy is not very punk. Because, yeah, you're mostly just like sitting in rooms reading texts and being very academic.
Well, I think
But I
that's
think,
I don't
well, I
know.
think that a lot of punks, like, are either moderately well read or are oversimplifying pretty complex ideas. Like that's kind of the point of the movement as you move past like 1978 is it gets very idealistic and it's a lot of simplifying things as much as possible, moving politics down to the uber local level, moving activism down to things that specifically apply to you. Like it's very individual and it's very simplified, but I think there is a certain, I guess, street level philosophy. The difference is that while these people are talking about philosophy on the street, they're talking about like overarching issues where I feel like someone like Henry Rollins is just going to talk about philosophical issues that affect his day-to-day life and lifting weights because he really loves lifting weights.
I guess it seems like you're sort of using punk, I mean, I guess from its, origin, the music. But I mean, I think also I was thinking of it more from like of the idea of like sort of rejecting society's norms and like doing what you want to do and like not giving a fuck. That's sort of like how I viewed like as punk rather than like from the context of the musical scenes. But I would say that I would agree that not all punk is. If we're talking about music, punk bands are obviously all concerned with sort of philosophy. Like I think in the hardcore roots, there's a little more involved in that. But like the Wonder Years, I don't think are really searching for like like you
the
said,
answers
anything
to the universe.
right. They're more concerned with like how am I going to deal with existing? Like I would, like growing up and like existing in a time when, you probably have all these things that you just have to accept and all these problems, and it feels messed up, and you can't do anything about it. And then there's people and the things that in life that change people, so it's very like less about like politics and more about like I guess what's the word I'm thinking of? I don't know. It's more about people than like the bigger ideas.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Shaun, did you have something?
Oh no, I'm just thinking. I'm just contemplating a lot of it now. Like I think this is just a really big question.
Yeah, I think the different approaches to it are important, though. Like Tyler, you were talking about me looking at it as the movement and the music. And I guess that's partially because like I've spent a lot of time studying punk both at a musical evolution level and at like an ideological evolution level. And it seems like for the most part the movement of punk and this idea of like do what you want to do and don't care about anybody else and DIY it, you can either be super philosophical and deep and like be very conscious of your methods the entire time, or you can be all about the feeling and just play loud, play fast, be juvenile, that sort of thing.
Punk and Drublick.
Right, punk and Drublick, as opposed to double nickels on the dime. So I guess it's really just a matter of approach. And I think what you're seeing now is, and I actually had this conversation with a professor recently who grew up in the 80s scene in DC. He was saying that it's going to be really interesting when a lot of these ex-activist punks and like conscious punks go into academia, and what sorts of papers are they going to be writing, and what is their research going to be. And that might be what we're seeing here. I mean, I don't know the backstories of any of the people in this film, but I could see some of them having roots in punk movements in different places in history.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's good. Oh, I think I'm done. Yeah, I'm ready to move on to everyone else's topic. So if something comes up and you think about it, I mean, that's what. Before we started doing the podcast, I kind of said like, let's do mine first because it's kind of big, and if it finds its way into somebody else's topic, we can talk about it a little bit more then. But I I'd be happy to see people's comments because I'm curious what people think about this, whether or not philosophy is punk, philosophy is too academic, philosophy is old white man sport.
Like badminton.
Yeah, or croquet.
Philosophy.
Right.
The croquet of academia.
But I think like what you're saying, I think Avatal, can we get her name right? Anyone know?
I feel really bad that I can't get her name right. Just call her Ronald or Ronell.
Yeah.
I can't even pronounce
Ronell.
that right.
Right. Anyway, so I mean, I think she basically asked the question that pretty much we were talking about this entire time. So, I think she's the most significant in terms of this conversation. So I would go back and probably watch that segment again.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, question before we move on. I'm curious. What did you guys think the second guy who spoke, Peter Singer? Or I guess he'd be third. Now I'm looking at the list after Cornel West. What did you think about that? What did you think about what he had to say? He had that thought experiment about how if you had, he's an Australian guy, and he was saying like,
oh, with the baby
in
the shallow pond.
Yeah. What do you think? Like, okay, so I was just thinking.
Let's walk through the experiment for the audience.
Okay. Well, he's standing in front of this like high-end store. I don't remember which one it was, and he's kind of saying like, well, the thing about ethics is they're complicated because you spend, an American doesn't, or someone in an industrialized country would say like spending $500 on a purse is okay, and then he says like, well, what if there was a starving child in front of you? Would you give them the $500? And of course he says like most people would say, well, yeah, of course I would give them the money so they get water or food or something. And then he says, well, if you know that it's happening in the rest of the world, then why would you spend $500 on a purse when you know that $500 would be much better spent, feeding a child who's starving and doesn't have clean water? And I think like as a thought experiment, it's pretty good, but I mean this Peter Singer is like, he's a strict utilitarian, and he says stuff like this, like he makes up really good thought experiments, but part of me kind of thinks he would say like, well, why would you want to do the art of punk? Why would you want to have punk rock when you can be an activist and actually make change?
See, and that's actually what I wrote a paper on last spring, is there any point in being a musical activist? Like, does that accomplish anything? Is it possible to make social or political change through the arts? And I never actually came to a real answer. I think it's more practical to be utilitarian, but it's very hard to live an entirely utilitarian existence,
Right. I wouldn't want to do it anyway, so.
I wouldn't either.
I think the benefit that, being a activist musician, I think the benefit is that it at least raises awareness for other people to be conscious of those things that are happening. Like the ASL Ice Bucket Challenge was super dumb, but I acknowledge that it existed after that fiasco, I guess you can call it that. So
I look at Live Aid, like any of those benefit concerts where people go out and musicians come on stage and they talk about donating money to a disaster or a tragedy or something like that. So I don't know. I think that not that Peter Singer's wrong because he's a really smart guy and I love his experiment, but I think like I don't know. I like the idea of being a musician because you have a microphone now and that gives you a lot of power. That you can say something and people will listen to you and like realistically you don't have a lot of like legitimized authority, but you have a really great mouthpiece to be able to say something that's really meaningful.
Unless it's bad and then no one will listen to it and then you go back and you work a 9-to-5 day job.
Yeah. Yeah.
3D printing!
Yeah, let's go on to that.
Actually, are you guys okay switching the schedule? Because I think it's a smoother transition if we go into my topic now.
Alright, whatever.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, so talking about if your music is bad and then you go back to your 9 to 5 day job, and this idea of like musicians have microphones and so people will listen to them. I wanted to talk about the way that music gets released to the public, and specifically why it seems there are years that we have a bunch of really good music and then years where it seems like nothing good came out at all. So I'll link below to a review that Anthony Fantano of the Needle Drop did for Modest Mouse's Strangers to Ourselves. And I don't really care so much about the review. It's more that at one point, and I'll probably just link right to this point in the review, he says that the album Good News for People Who Love Bad News by Modest Mouse came out in the same year as like a bunch of other big indie rock bands' breakthrough albums. So like Chutes Too Narrow by the Shins, and I don't even remember what all the other albums on the list were. I think there was an Apples in Stereo record. 2005.
2005, that was a good year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that was also the year that you got A Fever You Can't Sweat Out by Panic at the Disco, From Under the Cork Tree by Fall Out Boy, Three Cheers for Sweet Revenge by My Chemical Romance. Like, a lot of really big albums came out that year.
Woo!
Boy, did I choose the wrong side of the fence to be on for music. I should have been listening to that the complete other side. I would have been a much more enlightened individual.
I mean, you could have been listening to 3 Days Grace, so you did okay.
Right, you could always...
Yeah, you could be mean or angry, or you could be just like you.
You could also be a person in 2015 and still listening to Flyleaf.
Can you feel me all around
Why
you?
are we hating on Flyleaf? Why are we still hating on Flyleaf? I thought we were done with that. Because if we hate on Flyleaf, then we have to hate on Red Jumpsuit Apparatus, and I don't want to go there right now.
Listen, but I didn't hear that at work, though. That's the problem.
Where do you work at that plays Flyleaf? Hot Topic?
Chipotle.
They play that at Chipotle?
It's the behind the scenes, like the employees like can like plug in their iPods.
The underground of Chipotle, where they use Flyleaf and talk about fast food Kool-Aid.
Right.
Anyway, so Fantano brings up this excellent point that a bunch of really great albums all came out in this year, and like it's just something that happens sometimes and we don't really know why. And I'm wondering if A&R people at labels, and specifically the cool hunting types of A&R people, are responsible for this sort of thing. So if you didn't know, cool hunting is basically a profession that came up in the 90s. It's not always called cool hunting, but it's where you work at a company and your job is to talk to young people and find the ones that are early adopters, figure out what is cool, and then subvert that trend and sell it to all the people who are a little bit later to the party. And I'm wondering if that's what happens in all of these years when we get tons of new music, is that a couple of really good people at a couple of labels found a trend and really hopped on it and signed all these bands right in time for them all to make major label albums. And so it's this question of like, how manufactured is the music calendar?
Yeah, I don't know. I was thinking about this, and I don't know if I would say that it's manufactured as much as when we were talking about Bunbury a couple episodes back, and we were saying how Bunbury is always like 2 years late to the party in terms of getting bands that are putting out albums. But then it seems like, but the more that I look at the people who are coming into Bunbury this year, like Tame Impala is coming out with a new album. It's been 2 years since they put one out. You know, like Black Keys, it took them 2 years to put one out. It happened to be last year was the year they put one out. And I was just wondering if it just happens to be like organic when these bands, because think about the logistics of having to do a world tour, especially if you're a pretty up there band, like all the ones that he listed. You know, like these aren't like local guys that are, you know, pumping out albums all the time just because they need to have the exposure. Well, you know, it just cast as many lines as you can, hoping that you'll get a bite. Like a lot of these bands seem to be bands that they have like a ready base of people that are willing to just listen to their albums right away. So putting one out there that's awful is a lot worse of a decision than just trying to get one out there as fast as you can because you need to produce something.
That's fair. But then how do you think the cycle gets to this point where so many bands are on the same calendar?
Well, I mean, if you take a look at specifically the bands that you referenced, Fall Out Boy and Panic at Disco, both on the same record label. Um, so I'm surely
And working for the same management company as
right.
well.
I mean, I feel like us talking about this is not necessarily moot, but since we have like no insight into like what what anything to do with the record industry is even like, it's kind of hard to like really hypothesize it. But I mean, I would just say that I'm sure they asked on like I guess a record label, they probably asked their bands, when you gonna release an album, casually push them, like can you have one out in 2 years, 1 year, and then they try to like condense them as best as possible, possibly even pushing albums, so they kind of release in the same time. I'm sure there's a award season is an important
Yeah, there's
factor.
definitely an award season factor.
So.
I mean, that's what I mean, though. It just seems like I don't want to believe that there is this larger music conspiracy of like
No, I'm not saying there's a conspiracy.
that there's like people that are like the moles of music, and they go around and try and find people, because I think record
that's how that
companies
works, though.
do have scouts, though. I mean, they have scouts. They go around and try and find talent. I mean, that's how you drum up your business, is by finding good acts that are going to sell records. But I don't believe that it's like there's actually this like Tupac conspiracy of backlogged albums that come out like, someone's like watching the clock at the record studio, and then they just like hit enter and mass unload dump of new albums and music because it's time. Leaves come in the spring, and so does new music. Like, it's not, I just don't see it working like that.
There are definitely seasons of the year that new albums come out in, though. Like, there's the April to June pre-festival group of albums, and then there's always like the post-summer tour albums that come out September to November.
So, I mean, but that's what I thought about Muse, too, because I mean, it's been 3 years since they put out a new album. And I think they just got done doing a live DVD of them in Greece. They had to do world tours, so they probably did like 2 or 3 in between the last time when they let out Madness. Same way with Second Law. They did a couple world tours on that. I mean, it just takes some time just because they... Probably because the management company wants them to do those particular things. But yeah, then they got to go to the studio and write stuff. And since they're a pretty big legacy band, they can't just put out crap. They have to...
No. I still didn't like that single.
Debatable.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fine.
Oh my god, I just remembered a catchphrase I had from like 3 years ago.
Which one was that?
Where I just like exclaim harshly debatable to things.
Yeah. I forgot about that catchphrase. So I brought this topic up, and yeah, I was kind of feeling this like there's not really the conspiracy behind all of this, and maybe it's just how the calendar actually works. But then yesterday, Tom DeLonge posted a rant on Instagram.
Uh-oh.
And I'm going to try and pull it up for you, but if you haven't been watching the show or you don't follow pop punk, basically Tom DeLonge, longtime guitarist, co-founder of Blink-182.
Longtime space fan.
Longtime space fan. Is not getting along with his former bandmates at the moment. And he is just being really erratic and strange, and so the band scheduled some tour dates without him.
Uh-oh.
And the rant wasn't on Instagram.
Nobody likes you when you're Tom DeLonge, and they're gonna schedule a tour without you. What the hell is going on?
Hey, that was great. Yay, improvising because reasons.
I'm gonna see how many lyrical puns I can put into tonight's show.
I asked
I think
You
like,
should.
like 6 or 7 right now.
I asked some of my coworkers today what their favorite Blink song was, and they asked what mine was, and I said my joke answer is A New Hope, and they were like, I don't what's that? I'm like, that's like the best song. It's Blink-182 Star Wars.
Oh, I think he deleted the picture. He totally
That
deleted
makes
the
sense.
picture.
It was probably irrational.
It was.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't that irrational. It just explained from his side what was going on. And basically, he said, I'm putting out 4 albums this year. 3 of them have books accompanying them. I'm putting out a movie. I'm touring with Angels and Airwaves. So the original Blink contract said that we just had to record an album and do a tour. And then all of a sudden, I get this paperwork that says the record has to be out in the next 6 months. And I already had all these other contracts in play, and it physically couldn't fit into my calendar. And next thing I know, there's a press release saying that I'm not in the band anymore. And then at the end of it, it said, meanwhile, I'm making albums, making movies, and creating books. Why don't you read a book sometime, preferably one of mine? Christ.
I don't know how much of that has to do with cool seeking as it has to do with the dredging.
It's not the cool seeking, but yeah, there's like this contract debate now going on that's very public.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering if maybe at the early stages of someone's career it is kind of cool seeking, but then it turns into just this mess of contract calendars almost.
Yep. I won't disagree with you at all on that.
Yeah, because you look at like all of the CBGB bands got signed at the same time and all put out their first album in '77.
Right.
I mean, that's definitely a cool hunting incident.
But if they're like, I mean, did their label start that year? Did their label start in 1977?
No, Sire, an existing label, basically came in and signed everybody who was playing at CBGB all at once.
Okay.
Like, they signed the Ramones, and then the Ramones were like, you need to sign Talking Heads. And then they signed Talking Heads, and someone was like, you should sign the Dead Boys. You should sign Television. Or Television had already had a label deal. And they just went through and basically like signed all of the bands all at once.
Yeah, I guess. I can see that. There's like little scenes and little cliques that just get picked up all the time. Like that happening. I see what you're saying there. Yeah. There just happens to be a good scene. Like, yeah, I guess I see what you're saying now. Now it makes sense. It's like finding a coal vein or something. Like once you hit it, then you just follow it until it's tapped.
Remember The Devil Wears Prada?
Yeah, that was a good movie.
Yeah, I thought so. Let's move on.
3D printing.
Well, I would actually mean that, but I mean, I think that is an example of the electronica-infused post-hardcore metal influenced Job for a Cowboy extravaganza that was
and
like.
And Car was sitting there, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And are
still going.
I wrestled a bear once. The number
Good
12
man.
looks like you.
Yeah.
Sky Eats Airplane. Anyone remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember Sky Eats Airplane.
Okay. I see what you're saying now. I think there's a lot of good stuff going on though.
Well, I think there's a difference between like people following a trend. They're like, oh man, I'm in the metal band.
I wrestled a bear once is not a good band name.
Not true. Great name.
Great T-shirts.
Wait, hold on. What's Sarah saying? No, it was not. What was she? Was she not?
I think she was referring to that being a good band name.
Oh.
I don't know. Sarah, can you explain yourself?
Oh, that's why.
Sarah, the only commentator in the entire audience.
No, Ben commented on something.
That's right. Sorry, Ben.
Past it, and I feel bad. So we'll come back to it at the end. Yeah, I think these scenes kind of get swallowed up all at once, and then we beat them until they're dead. And that's just kind of how the music industry works.
Mumford and Sons.
Right, Mumford and Sons. But
the
sometimes
Mowgli.
Bands who survive... Yeah. But sometimes the bands who survive the initial boom of a scene end up making albums and getting like sucked into this calendar thing is what I'm talking about, and it's probably something to do with contract terms.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of new stuff coming out this year particularly, whereas last year I looked and I only added 10 albums to my iTunes in the whole year. And I think I've added like 5 since this year started, and it's only March.
See?
Sarah was talking about Devil Wears Prada, which means we can still say that I Wrestled a Bear Once is a great band name.
Oh, okay.
I actually have never seen Devil Wears Prada, the movie, so I wouldn't know.
It's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
I wasn't just kidding about that. It's not like Academy Award winning greatness, but it was good acting all the way around.
Good acting?
Good. I wasn't sure if it was good. If good actor scene was a word, because there's a lot of like really good leading ladies in the whole movie. So
there are. That's true.
And fashion is a good industry. I work in it, so it's pretty neat.
Fashion.
Neat.
Pretty neat. All right. Well, that's all.
Let's talk about 3D printing now.
Let's actually talk about 3D printing, you guys.
Yay! Okay. So.
Okay, well, that was 3D printing. Next, we're on to
Let's talk about Bunbury some more.
Let's talk about pep projections. This is the fifth episode of the Budberry Fancast. Thanks for returning. All right. Anyway, so I'm gonna give a TLDR of 3D printing in case you didn't know. 3D printing is when you take I guess sort of like a file type that something's been rendered in a program like Maya or some AutoCAD program, and you send it to some sort of machine like a MakerBot, and what it does is it has like this sort of gel that hardens, and it goes around in like circles, like it slowly layers up until it makes this fully formed piece of whatever. You can pretty much make anything that you can draw. Up until this point, it's taken upwards of it's taken hours to produce these things. We just kind of prevented it from taking off, and so I've used a 3D printer like once. I had like a school project where we wanted to make like custom 3D phone cases. And apparently, the machine just hardly worked. I mean, even though it was like brand new, it was very hard to get it to work correctly. And there's like a lot of like flashing, so there's a lot of extra like material that you had to like scrape off, and it's so like it wasn't exactly a great product when you're done with it. But to be fair, we were also using probably a lower end of the spectrum like build, like probably like a couple thousand rather than like the tens of thousands that it could cost. But anyway, so this new process apparently it's from Terminator 2. I have no idea. I've never seen that movie. Sorry, guys.
Where did you grow up? What movies? You haven't seen any movies. Devil Wears Prada, haven't seen it.
Okay.
Terminator 2, haven't seen it. There's only like 3 movies that exist. There's like that, and then something else. I don't know. I've probably seen it, but you know what I'm talking about.
Listen, my parents didn't like watching movies, okay? I'm sorry.
Whatever.
But anyway, so, I mean, it's an 80s action movie, so I would probably like it. So they have this process where instead of, like, kind of, like, building up, it's sort of, like, pulling out, and there's, like, an infrared laser that kind of, like, makes the shape of whatever you're printing. Right. There's lots of finger quotes here. I'm overly simplified. It's where it's almost insulting.
Laser.
Right, laser. And then so you pull it out and it makes whatever you want to create, and it takes like
minutes.
A fourth of the time.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is it takes minutes, it produces things very quickly by pulling them out.
Yeah.
So it's the Pullout King? I think it's the Pullout King.
I'm not sure what you mean, Taylor. Can you...
Yeah, elaborate. I don't know what you mean either. I just got real dumb.
I had to ask my boss at work yesterday what skeet meant. He did what a television.
Did you actually?
It's a kind of wood, Tyler. It's skeet.
Listen,
It
it was
a
it came on the
kind of
radio.
flavoring.
Get
Tyler,
low.
how you make it to 2015 and not know what skeet means. Anyway,
Taylor, I
I
know
was
it.
making a Portlandia reference. Okay, okay.
I don't. What's that?
So this 3D printer prints things really quickly and much more efficiently than other 3D printers. Your question?
Have you ever used a 3D printer? Yes or no?
I have not used a 3D printer, but I used to work in an office where we had one, and so I was around for 3D printing. And they're really cool. I actually have a friend who runs a business where they 3D print custom Nerf gun parts, which is pretty sweet. I knew a guy who 3D printed his own business cards to take to a game development conference, and it totally nailed him a job.
Is that
So-
Kyle?
No, it
Or
wasn't
is it-
Kyle.
Oh, Jay?
No, it wasn't anybody in that
Okay.
circle. It was somebody that I worked with. But yeah, so I'm fairly familiar with 3D printing, though I've never done it myself.
All right, next, Shaun.
Nope, absolutely zero.
All right.
I look at books and that's about it. That's all really I've done in terms of 3D printing.
Sean's like, can you 3D print policy?
Don't,
You
because
could-
I want a job, so don't do that. Take a baseball bat to that machine, because I need
All right.
I need more work, please.
Next question. What realistic and unrealistic expectations do you have for 3D printing? So what I mean by that is,
Oh,
so,
you don't have to
you know, you
explain.
can-
I know what you mean.
Explain it to the viewers.
right? Okay, so like an unrealistic expectation would be to like make a fully functional like high-powered artillery gun in 10 minutes. Using only a 3D printer is an example of unrealistic expectation. Like, what sort of things do you want out of this? Like, what uses would it have, practically or unpractically? Like, what would be a fun thing to do with it? What would be an inventive way to use it?
So I saw, I think it was last year, I want to say it's South by Southwest. Might be wrong. Oreo had a special 3D printer made that could 3D print Oreo cookies with whatever design and text you wanted on them, and then you could eat them. And
Oh,
so
okay,
there
I was
was-
like, are these edible?
yeah, it like it
Polymer.
prints the cookie part of the Oreo and then puts the cream in the middle of it. And so I've seen a little bit about it. I haven't researched it very thoroughly, but they're saying that you could realistically 3D print food like at scale if you just had the raw materials like powdered wheat or
Wheat.
whatever.
Powdered
Yeah,
wheat.
so I'm pretty interested in that as a realistic thing. I think that's a really good way to bring food to places where food is less available. As far as unrealistic
Watch your
expectations,
back, Tyler. Taylor's
completely related.
out of a job.
I really want to be able to like 3D print food in my home. So, like, you see the scene in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy where they're like, this machine can make you any kind of food you want within reason. And Arthur's like, well, I just really want a cup of tea. And they're like, oh, well, it makes something that sort of resembles tea. And it, like, poofs. And then there's this beverage that tastes like it should be a cup of tea, but just isn't really. And that's what I want. Like, I want a machine that can make me a Big Mac whenever I want a Big Mac.
Which is never, right?
Which is never. But I like the concept. I think it's unrealistic, and it would be super cool.
Presupposing you were in the mood for a Big Mac.
Making
Would make one.
Making food was a thought that never crossed my mind when I was thinking about what a 3D printer could make. Like, my realistic thing that I thought would be really cool for you, Tyler, and would be cool for me too, is that you could buy the schematics for a board game and literally print it off. Like, print off the pieces and just, like, go to your printer and just print off the board. That would be really sweet. And then I thought, too, I want to cheat at Scrabble because I'm horrible at the game, so I would just print off a bunch of pieces and then keep them in my pocket, so I would always have something to say. My unrealistic thing is Lego pieces.
That doesn't sound unrealistic at all. That sounds like almost a practical application
But
of that.
well, yeah, but I mean, like, well, I watched this documentary on them, and they said like they used to make like what 14 million pieces or something, Lego pieces, and then they scaled it back to like 7 million, which means that there is like existing parts out there that aren't made anymore. And I was thinking like you could make like so many cool things, but I don't know like if you could use the Lego polymer for this kind of printing. I mean, I imagine that at some point you would be able to, but right now the Lego pieces are injection molded, so like making I just think you could do like a bunch of different things that would be really cool. Um,
hmm
and I like the
So you
medical thing. The TED Talk was cool where he was talking about it. You making the heart stents that were like perfectly formed and stuff like that.
right? Clearly, none of us are concerned with like the actual practical uses where it's like saving people's lives or building prosthetics. Fuck it, we want Legos.
Legos, board games, and Big Macs. That's what we want.
After our conversation about basically the deconstruction of life.
Dude, edible Legos that taste like Big Macs. You could build your own burger. Literally build your own burger.
It's everything America
off
has
your
ever
burger.
wanted. To build your own.
I don't know if that's everything we've
So
wanted.
American, you get to choose
Hey,
everything.
no one asked you, Tyler. You got your chance to speak.
You can
I
go
think
back
America
to
really
Chipotle
just
and
wants
have
those
flavor
chairs like
burrito.
quality.
Oh
That's
yeah.
what we.
Oh, you're good too. Could you print
Oh,
Diet
gosh.
Coke?
Hey, if we can make pizza a brunch food, we can do anything.
Pizza is any kind of food.
Hashtag pizza for brunch.
Yeah, hashtag pizza for brunch. Don't let that.
Don't let it die. Don't let it
Don't
die.
let that.
So before we talk about pizza, which we should do.
No one asked me what I wanted to make out of 3D
Oh,
modeling.
okay. Tyler, what do you want to make out of 3D printing and modeling? People in the questions do that as well. Tell us what you would make.
Now it's this token. It's like, well, what do you want, Tyler? I guess.
What do you want?
What do you want this time, Tyler?
Well, I was gonna say board game pieces, but Shaun stole that, so But I mean, that is good for prototyping, so that is a really good idea. But I guess I would like to see actual like I don't know, would vinyls be able to be
Like
made?
records?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, would
Um,
You could make little
No.
tiny
Maybe.
records. Little tiny ones.
if you could somehow replicate the grooves in a record, wouldn't it?
you absolutely could.
If you had the precise enough laser, I imagine that you could do it.
Yeah, I don't think the lasers are at that point yet, but yeah, I think that could be doable.
All right, so that's
It
unrealistic.
sounds like
then.
something Jack White's working on in some secret lair in
I was
Nashville.
gonna say, like,
The world's first 3D printed record.
Third Man Skunk Works is like making up 3D printing record style. Just-
What was your
have
unrealistic
one
thing,
more-
Tyler?
Well, I guess that's technically now unrealistic. I don't know. I'm done. But I do have one more question if we want to talk about it, or do we talk about pizza? Your
No.
stupid pizza.
Let's talk about your thing.
Go ahead, because we have to answer some things from the question box, too.
Oh, okay. Well, we can
So-
answer those questions first.
So Ben has a comment about 3D printing. Says that so far it's been used for small toys, keychains, etc., and not a lot of really good commercial uses. There are some commercial uses, but it's definitely like in the maker community and relatively small scale. I'm talking about my friend who's creating parts to mod and eventually build your own Nerf guns that like shoot farther and are less children's toys and more adult hobby activities.
Weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah, it's technically a commercial use. Like he's making money off of it, but it is still a toy. So yeah, I think 3D printing is still it's in its early novelty stages. That's for sure.
I mean, a lot of things start out as doing little tiny jobs and end up being like really. I don't know. I see a lot of promise for this. When I was watching that video, I was like, if this starts to be as a manufacturing process, we could be looking at Edison's like phonograph or something. You know, like this whole idea of like spinning a wax wheel on a little cylinder that turns into today like MP4s and FLAC music streaming over the internet. I mean, holy crap, that's pretty crazy. Sarah would make school supplies.
Oh, come on.
That's the most teacher answer ever.
What
Lisa Frank.
what specific school supplies would you make?
Yeah, what specifically would you make, Sarah? Ben, what would you 3D print? Other people, tweet at us. What would you 3D print if you could 3D print anything?
Children tasers.
And why is it Lisa Frank folders?
You can make anything, and why is it Lisa Frank folders? I'm just saying, you could totally 3D print pizza. You could do it. Pizza
What is
for
taste
everything.
right though? That's almost something you have to do like Freebase.
I think you would 3D print each individual piece
Yeah, I guess.
and then put them all together on an assembly line.
Right. But that's
Okay.
but that's
That's how
how
they make
pizza's
their
made
DiGiorno.
though. Pizza's always made with
Print out.
love.
Print out the slices to make a whole pizza.
Pencils. Students never have them.
No, her
Actually-
students are bad at pencils. They're just really bad.
I mean, that seems
Brunch
like a good
pizza.
way.
Brunch
That
pizza.
seems like a good way to do mechanical pencils, actually.
Mhm. Oh yeah.
3D print them.
Yeah.
Oh, so Ben asks, brunch pizza. Yes, brunch pizza. Great segue.
Yeah.
Last week, we launched a campaign and then didn't put a whole lot of energy into it in between shows because we all got busy. You can follow at Pizza Union PR on Twitter. It is the
What is
PR
the-
office for our campaign to make pizza everything. Pizza for brunch, pizza for breakfast, pizza for lunch, pizza for dinner, pizza for Congress, pizza as the backing of our currency, pizza for everything. Shaun, Tyler,
What does the PR mean on the back of?
public
Public
relations.
relations.
Oh.
And also,
Are we that big already? Do we already have like a?
well, it's also
a need
because
for that?
at Pizza Union is a pizza shop called the Pizza Union, and so
Right.
we couldn't take that name on Twitter.
Well, good, because we should support those local businesses. Which is another point that I'm willing to make, and since we have lots of time, I'm going to say it. I think that we should start Punk Lent. You know, because I think that we in America view Lent the wrong way. That you take away from something, that you like hold something back to show, you know, your godliness or something. I don't think that's right. I think we should do as Jesus taught and give back to your community. So go eat at your local pizza establishments. Go support your local bands. Go and do something punk rocky, you know? Do some philosophy. Go to a soup
be
kitchen and
more-
do something, you know? That's
Be
what I
more
wanna see.
proactive
Right.
than reactive.
Punkland. Yeah. I like it.
Well, that's certainly in a different direction I was expecting. I was like, so you want me to not put orange juice in my screwdriver for a month?
No, Tyler, that's called alcoholism.
Next week on the show, we confront Tyler's alcohol.
We hold an intervention. Please tweet your letters to Tyler about how it makes you feel when he drinks. To at Dudes Brunch,
That dude's
or
right.
specifically at TDR Design. If we can get the whole internet to tweet about how Tyler's drinking makes them sad, it may help or hurt his chances of getting a real job.
This trade is going off the tracks. I don't understand how it got to this point.
Why did you think I was gonna say like just like liquor up, but don't like put anything else in your liquor?
Well, it's like Lent, where it's like you give up things like pizza, but it's like it's punk, so it's like I eat nails for breakfast without any milk.
Oh, yeah, I mean you can do that too. I mean, make sure that you meerkat that if you decide that you want to eat nails, because I mean, I don't want to watch
Meerkat
anybody
your
hurt
nails
themselves,
for
but if you're gonna
breakfast.
do it, I'm not gonna you know like say like, oh, I watched the
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, thankfully we're running out of time before this podcast turns into even more of a
Oh.
train. So real quick, let's get through our shameless plugs. But before that, anything to follow up on from last week? Obviously, follow Pizza Union PR on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. We didn't really get any reactions on the Muse single or the Tame Impala single. People should still tell us what you think about that.
Yeah. Oh, and tweet
Ben
us
wants to
at
know
#punklosophy.
Punklosophy. Oh, I like that. Hashtag Punklosophy.
Curious what you think.
Ben wants to know why anyone would give up pizza for Lent. I say good question, Ben.
Yeah.
Way to join the union. There you go. Pizza union.
I realize it's heresy. I'm sorry.
Send that guy some stickers.
I will send him some stickers. I will. Actually, I'll have Drew do it because Drew made the stickers. Shouts out to Drew at JetSkiSki on Twitter for making our killer stickers. You can see a picture of one on my Instagram, and I'll share it on the Dudes Brunch Facebook and Twitter later tonight.
We need to send some.
They look really good. They're our pig logo on a sticker.
Or you can pig it anywhere. Pick it on up.
Put
one on your computer, or on your friends, or on your cat, or dog. We're not animalist here.
Did you guys get your stickers in the mail?
Nope.
Mm-mm.
Where'd you send it to?
I think Drew asked for your address. You should give him your address.
Okay.
I did not give him my address.
That's why you didn't get stickers in the mail.
Well, that's okay. You can send me, right?
Yeah. Okay, so shameless plugs. Let's do it.
Go for it, Tyler. You can go first.
What you got, Tyler? Shameless plugs.
You can find me at TDR Design literally anywhere. Get at
No
me.
T-shirt, no nothing.
Get wrecked. No, listen. I'm in week 2. I've been working for 6 days straight after my 1 day off, followed by another 5 days of working. So I've had negative time to do anything. So.
Fair enough.
Yay!
Shaun, shameless plugs.
Check me out, Evans_M, and then Urge, URGE. Watched a pretty cool documentary this week on the history of pinball. That was kind of cool. There was a Japanology one that I watched about vending machines that was also really sweet. I didn't know vending machines could be so cool, but I really want to buy a can of coffee out of a vending machine now. It's almost be worth
a can of coffee?
Hot can of coffee out of vending machine.
Huh.
Yeah.
Neat.
So I mean,
we will put links to those things down in the description box.
It's pretty cool. I mean, yeah. Don't build policy writing machines, but do build hot coffee can hot machines.
All right. And shameless plugs from me. You can follow me on Twitter at TC Olmstead. You can subscribe to me on Medium if you want to see the written content that I do. And please follow at Dudes Brunch on Twitter and like Dudes Brunch Podcast on Facebook. We've started sharing some articles there that we don't get time to share on the show. So there's always fun things to be seen on there throughout the week. Get your dose of weird alternative culture and bad internet memes on Facebook and Twitter. And I think that's pretty much it. Any last words from Tyler or Shaun?
Tyler, what are we gonna talk about next week? Nothing.
Put me on spot. The deconstruction of pizza toppings.
There you go. We'll talk about it, the deconstruction of pizza toppings, live.
What's in my sausage?
What is in my sausage? We may never know. Thanks, everybody, for coming, and we'll see you next time.
There's always my